I'm Janet, the plant-powered peddler, and it is the week of the bundle, the vegan health bundle. And Sid is here with me, Sid Nodder, and she's going to talk to us about what she's contributing to the bundle. Here you
Hi,
go,
Janet.
Sid.
Thanks for having me
Hi
on
there.
today. Thank you so
Yeah,
much. I'm fine. Thank you. So for
great
the
to have you.
bundle, which is such a good deal, right, at $49 for all of these things that are in there, I created a label reading class to go in the bundle because I think labels are very confusing and misleading sometimes. And so I created a little course here that has tips for how to evaluate a product to see if it's something you should buy. So I've got a few slides I could show if you'd like me to get started with that.
Definitely.
All right.
Tell
All
people who
right.
you are, Sid.
Oh yeah, well, my name is Sid Nodder. I'm a longtime nutrition educator. I'm an author, a past newspaper columnist, and I've been teaching whole food plant-based classes for over 25 years now. And I've worked with school districts and a hospital's fitness center. But today I really want to talk about label reading because ultra processed foods, as you know, are a hot topic right now. And there are so many things that we need to be aware of when we're purchasing products from the store. So let me get my screen going here. If you can see that, can you see my screen right there?
Yes, I can.
Label reading tips. Okay, I will get going
Yes.
then with that. So for those of us that do follow a healthy eating plan, or we strive to, the majority of the foods in our cart are going to be fresh and frozen produce and items from the dry bulk section. But what about all those processed foods that are out there too? Are all processed foods unhealthy? No, they are not. There are many acceptable things that we could purchase, like canned beans and salsa and marinara sauce and whole grain pasta and certain cereals and even some packaged soups. But the only way we truly know if a product is healthy is to read the label and the ingredient list. So let's talk about some terms here. First of all, the term processed refers to anything that changes the food from its original form. And the USDA lists that as anything that's been crushed or cut or chopped or diced or sliced or pitted or blended or pureed or juiced or dried. I mean, we process foods all the time in our kitchens, right? With our food processors, when you think about it, and our blenders and our stove. But just because a food is processed does not necessarily mean it's bad for us. But the more processed a food is, then the more health risks it poses. So let's take a quick look here at some of the differences. Minimally processed foods are foods that are processed at their peak freshness to lock in the nutritional quality and that freshness. So that could be foods like frozen fruits and veggies, or pre-cut veggies, or bagged lettuce, canned tomatoes. It also refers to foods that undergo some type of process like drying or freezing. It changes the original state of the food, but it doesn't add anything to the food. And I think Butler soy curls would be a good example of that. Minimally processed foods typically get a green light, but you still have to read the list. And then moving up the spectrum is processed foods, which are foods that might be altered in some way or fortified with like calcium or other minerals. Sometimes other ingredients are added too, like oils and sweeteners and spices and preservatives. Now, examples of these types of foods would be breakfast cereals, jarred pasta sauce, salad dressings, certain crackers and breads. These items get a yellow light until we read the label. We're not sure if they're good or not until we read the label. But then there's the ultra processed foods, which have significantly changed the makeup of the original food. And these foods have been altered to include fats, sugars, salt, dyes, oils, and they're typically loaded with additives and preservatives too to maintain a long shelf life. These foods are the worst of the worst. Ultra processed foods include things like frozen meals, pre-made microwave meals, canned convenience foods, packaged soups, granola bars, cookies and sweets, candy, fake cheeses and meats even, fried foods, sugary breakfast cereals, chips and soda. And these items definitely get a red light. So in case you're wondering how much ultra-processed foods Americans are eating, 73%, nearly 3/4 of the food in our grocery stores are considered ultra-processed foods. Let's just call them UPFs for short. And so not surprisingly, the US is currently ranked as the top consumer of UPFs, with the UK and Canada close behind. UPFs are comprising nearly 60%, 58% of the calories consumed in the US is coming from these ultra-processed foods. So think about that. That's a huge number. And even more disturbing is this study by Tufts University. They looked at nearly 34,000 kids and found that their intake of UPFs has jumped to 67% of their calories. And that was in 2018. So that was 6 years ago. So how are these UPFs impacting our health? Well, here is just a brief list. I'm not going to go into these in any depth, but just know that they are causing a lot of health damage. And I wanted to share all of this with you just to point out that label reading is so important. And this is one reason why, because these ingredients that we might be consuming can lead to a lot of health damage. So if anyone really cares about what they're ingesting and what their families are being fed to, then label reading is really crucial in order to know if something is healthy or not. But many consumers find food labels to be confusing or misleading or difficult to interpret. So that's what this course is about. We're going to dive into a few basic guidelines to help sort through the confusion. And I just like to point out that I'm not here to tell you what products to buy and what not to buy. That is totally your decision. I'm just here to give you some label reading tips so you can make the best informed decision for yourself. So the first tip is to ignore any crafty claim on the box. And the course is separated into different lessons. So this first lesson is about crafty claims. And processed foods are some of the most deceptive foods out there because they're often touted as healthy when in reality they're filled with junk. And manufacturers will often feature these misleading health claims in order to lure us into purchasing these products. So they know what kind of diets are trending too. Like, for example, you'll see keto friendly right now on a lot of products. That's because they know that keto is popular. They adjust their labels to draw people in. And so the course goes into detail about these deceptive claims. But keep in mind that just because an item says natural or organic does not mean the nutritional content is healthy. So whether it's organic or not, a cookie is still a cookie and can still be filled with a lot of sugars and fats. So we take a look at several different products in the course too. Now here's a typical example of a label. This one's for a breakfast cereal. And you'll notice that labels are broken into two sections. First, there's the nutrition facts box, and then the ingredient list is shown below that box typically. But these two sections, they can be positioned differently on various products. Sometimes they're not even next to each other, so you really have to look. But the best way to evaluate a product is to always read the ingredient list first. And often you'll have to go no further than that to know if a product is acceptable. But then if the ingredient list looks okay, there's a few things we'll take note of in the nutrition facts box too. So always start with the ingredient list. Now for this breakfast cereal, keep in mind that ingredients are listed in order by weight, beginning with the most predominant ingredient and then followed in descending order by the ingredients in smaller weight amounts. That means that this product contains more of the ingredients at the beginning and less of the products that are at the end. So here we see the first ingredient in this cereal is wheat flour, which is highlighted there in yellow, followed by unsalted butter, highlighted there in blue, and then brown sugar, white sugar, and so on, all the way down to cinnamon. So we really need to look no further than the first two ingredients to know that this item is not compliant with a healthy diet. The first two ingredients are refined flour and dairy. So you will learn how to quickly spot refined flours in the course too, and I'll talk about that more in just a minute. So the ingredient list is always the first place to look. And as I mentioned, you'll often have to go no further. So let's talk about sugars. American adults and kids are now consuming roughly 20 teaspoons of added sugar a day. So think about that. It's 60 pounds of sugar a year. It's like someone brings a 5-pound bag of sugar to your door every month and expects you to eat that. And that's per person, by the way. And teenagers are consuming about 22 teaspoons of sugar on average. So the lesson on sugars, we're going to talk about the difference between refined sugars and natural sugars. And then we'll discuss some of the negative health results that occur from consuming those inflammatory refined sugars. We'll talk about products that typically contain a lot of sugar. And for those of you who are not following an SOS-free diet, that stands for sugar, oil, and salt. Many people avoid all added sugar, oil, and salt. But if you're not following that type of diet, then to what degree should you limit your sugar intake? We'll talk about the recommendations from the Heart Association and from Harvard Health. And then you'll learn how to quickly tell how much sugar is in a product. And you'll also see how many different ways that sugar can be listed in an ingredient list. And we'll talk about why manufacturers often use many types of sugar in one product. In fact, I'll show you a cereal that has 12 different types of sugar in it, just so sugar isn't listed as the first ingredient. So some of the products that we'll look at for their sugar content include a natural jelly, soda pop, and Bobo's strawberry stuffed oat bites, just to name a few. So you'll get a lot of examples in the course of what to look for. Then there's a lesson on oils and added fats. And we do need some fat in our diet to support healthy body functions, but just how much do we actually need? Well, for optimal health, according to many of our lifestyle medicine doctors, our optimal fat consumption should be about 10 to 15% of our calories. Now, the Cancer Society promotes 20% fat, while the World Health Organization advocates for 15%. So let's shoot for like 10 to 15% of fat. After all, oatmeal, chickpeas, and quinoa, all of those are about 15% fat, and those are all fine to eat. Now, does that mean we can never have any higher fat plant foods like nuts or seeds or avocado? No, it doesn't mean that at all, and you'll learn all about that in the course. You will learn how to tell how fatty a product is. In other words, what percentage of calories in a product is coming from fat, right? If we're trying to stay within that 10 to 15% range, it's a very quick calculation, and it's based on the fact that there are 9 calories in 1 gram of fat. And it doesn't matter the source of the fat. It could be chicken fat or cheese fat or avocado fat. Whether it's animal fat or plant fat, all fat has 9 calories per gram. So in the course, you'll learn the quick calculation to use in order to determine the percentage of calories coming from fat in a product. And if the product has saturated fat, we'll use that same calculation to determine how much of that fat is actually saturated fat. So here's an example. This is a package of Daiya cheddar cheese slices. This is a popular dairy-free cheese that's on the market. And when we start with the ingredient list, like we always should, we see that the first ingredient is Daiya's oat cream blend, which contains some oat flour and pea protein. And then we see coconut oil is the second ingredient. So that's a big red flag for many of us. So anyway, in the course, we go into more detail about this product, and it would be your decision whether this item goes back on the shelf right now. But just for practice, let's calculate the fat. And so based on that calculation that you'll learn in the class, you'll discover that these cheese slices, over 64% of the calories in this product are coming from fat. And then when we calculate the saturated fat because of that coconut oil, we find it's the same percentage. So not only is this product really high in fat, all of its fat is coming from saturated fat, which is one of the highest inflammatory food components we could eat. Then along the same topic, we'll also cover a time-saving hack that you can quickly talk to your phone and find out quickly what the percentage of fat is in a product. You'll learn about trans fats. Those are hydrogenated oils, which have been banned, but they are still in certain products out there like peanut butter. You'll see hydrogenated oils there, and tortilla shells are a big one too. I rarely can find a tortilla shell that does not have hydrogenated oils. And we'll talk about that in the label classes as well, why we want to avoid those. And then you'll learn a labeling loophole. How can a product say 0 fat and 0 calories on the label when in fact that product has a lot of fat and calories? You'll learn about that little loophole. And then lastly, if you'd rather calculate your fat intake based on the number of fat grams you see on a product, I'll show you how to do that as well in the course. And then there's a lesson on sodium or salt. Now, we do need some sodium for essential function of our bodies, but we only need about 500 milligrams a day, which we get naturally through our plant foods. On a whole food plant-based diet, we're getting all the sodium we need. Now, many of you who are SOS free, you don't consume any added salt, while other people allow for minimal amounts of salt. And we'll talk about the current recommendations for salt intake, as well as the biggest source of sodium in our diet, which is coming from 70% is coming from processed foods, meats, and restaurants. And we'll talk about that it doesn't matter the type of salt being used, if it's table salt or sea salt or pink salt, that doesn't change the recommendation. All salts contain sodium. It's just the amounts may differ by spoon size based on the crystal size, but do know that all salts do contain sodium. You'll learn how to stay low salt if you decide that's what you want to do. And we'll discuss the various health concerns associated with too much salt. Americans are eating 3 to 4 times the salt they should be. And we'll look at which products are notorious for being high in sodium, like soups and frozen entrees. And we'll look at some examples too. Now, here's an example. This is Amy's Chinese noodles and veggies. It's a frozen entree. And we see the sodium listed here by the blue arrow is 780 milligrams, which is really high, especially if your goal for the day is to stay low salt. Again, you'll learn what that means to stay low salt. And I really want to point out the serving size, how important that is. So it's highlighted there in yellow that the serving size for this item is 1 tray, which means the whole package. But if there were 2 servings in this item and you're planning to eat the whole thing, you'd have to double the amounts of sodium and calories and sugar and so on. Then we also look at several products for an overview of the sugar, oil, and salt, such as this item here. This is a no sugar added mint chip frozen dessert, which is very tempting for me. Mint chip happens to be my favorite flavor. But when we read the ingredient list first there, we see coconut milk, followed then by oatmeal, coconut water, coconut oil, erythritol, which is an artificial sweetener, chicory root extract, sunflower oil, more erythritol, and so on. So as much as I love mint chip, this product would stay on the shelf for me personally because of the oils and the erythritol, which is a questionable sugar alcohol that Dr. Greger and the Cleveland Clinic advise us not to eat. So just for practice though, let's run the numbers on this product and you'll learn how to do that in the course. We see that 81% of the calories in this product is coming from fat. That is really a high fat product, with 59% of that fat being saturated fat. Again, it's that coconut oil. The sodium is pretty low at 10 milligrams per serving, and there's no added sugar. You remember they said it's no sugar added. However, they're using erythritol instead, which is that questionable sweetener, and 2 teaspoons per serving are included in that. So in the course, you'll learn how to evaluate all of these things. You'll also learn about refined grains versus whole grains. There's a lesson just on that. And all grains start out as whole grains, right? And they're made up of 3 parts: the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. And it's these 3 layers all together that really make grains the powerful disease preventers that they are. But only 2 of those parts, the outer layers, which are the bran and the germ, that's where all the nutrition lives: the fiber, the B vitamins, the antioxidants, the protein, the healthy fats, and minerals like folate and iron. Those live in those 2 outer coatings. And so refined grains result when those outer coatings get stripped away, and that removes a lot of the nutrition as well. So the fiber and the B vitamins and all of those minerals, they're no longer present. According to wholegrainscouncil.org, refining a grain reduces at least 17 key nutrients from the grain. And then once those grains get stripped of the outer coating and they're ground into flour, it can then be chemically treated with bleaching agents, and then vitamins and minerals are often added in or sprayed into the mix so that the product can be legally labeled as enriched. Additives and preservatives are also added to lengthen the shelf life and to alter the color and the taste. So refined flours are used in white bread and hot dog buns and pasta and cereals and pretzels and so many things. So in the course, you will learn how to distinguish between whole grains and refined grains. And just because a package says wheat bread does not mean it's a whole grain. Oftentimes, if you see a loaf of wheat bread, it's really a refined grain that has been colored dark in order to appear more nutritious. And you'll learn why it matters to our health to avoid these refined grains. You'll also learn some crafty claims about grains like multi-grain or 7-grain or good source of whole grains. You'll see that on a label. What does that actually mean? And then we'll talk about different types of flour too, like durum wheat flour and semolina flour. Are those whole grains? Well, that can depend. Here's an example. These are a Barilla elbow pasta, and the ingredients are semolina wheat and, the ingredients here are semolina wheat, and durum wheat flour. So would this be a whole grain or refined grain? The course will teach you why this product is not a whole grain as compared to the whole wheat elbow pasta from Walmart, which is indeed a whole grain. So you will learn how to determine that. And then there's a lesson on artificial sweeteners, which they seem so attractive because they're no calories, right? They seem like a great alternative to sugar, and they are intensely sweet, 200 to 700 times sweeter than table sugar, depending on the sweetener that you're using, the artificial sweetener. They're used in soft drinks, candies, jellies, dairy products, puddings, and pretty much anything labeled sugar-free. So in the course, you'll learn a little bit more about the popular brands on the market today, like Equal and Splenda and Sweet and Low. And we'll also cover the side effects and the health concerns associated with these fake sweeteners. And we'll also look at the issues associated with sugar alcohols like xylitol and sorbitol, erythritol, and others. And then we'll discuss some healthier choices too. And we'll be pointing out that even healthy sugars should be eaten sparingly and within a certain limit, right? It's even though we're eating some healthy sweeteners, does not give us free rein to just eat a ton of that. You know, there are some limits to be staying on the safe side. And then we will look at some product examples. For example, we'll look at Skinny Girl's fat-free, sugar-free poppy seed dressing, Smucker sugar-free jam. We'll look at Diet Coke and some sugar-free Crystal Light. What are the manufacturers using in these products if they're not using sugar? That's another reason why label reading is so important. And then there's a section on the food dyes, preservatives, and additives. And we'll talk about the FDA system regarding these items and which products undergo safety reviews and which products do not. We'll talk about the FDA's GRAS system. That stands for Generally Recognized as Safe, which is the most criticized aspect of our food regulation process, and how since 2016, manufacturers can now self-determine the GRAS status of an ingredient with no FDA oversight at all, which has created a major loophole resulting in many unknown ingredients in the food supply that the FDA and the public are not even aware of. So packaged foods contain thousands of dyes, preservatives, and additives, and new ones are being developed each and every day. And some of those additives can be listed as artificial flavoring, which are man-made products, or natural flavoring, which can be any type of highly processed animal or plant byproduct. We'll talk about dyes too, like blue 1, blue 2, green 3, red 40, yellow 5, and yellow 6. Now, red 3 has recently been banned here in the United States, but that does not take effect until January of 2027. And these these dye-colored foods are usually targeted toward kids. And they're sometimes referred to as the rainbow of risks due to the increased risks they pose for our children, especially with hyperactivity and attention disorders, which is really concerning when you consider how many dye-colored candies and frostings and cereals and beverages that kids are exposed to. But it's not just kids' foods. Dyes are in many types of foods. You'll see yellow 5 in almost every jar of pickles out there, so you really have to watch for that. So you'll learn more about this in the course, and you'll also learn about titanium dioxide, also known as titanium white or pigment white 6, which is a color additive used in salad dressings and chewing gum and candy and sweets, snacks, coffee creamers, breads, and it gives the product a white appearance, or it can boost the colors of the other dyes that are in the product. And this chemical, it's a chemical, it was deemed unacceptable in Europe several years ago because of genotoxicity concerns, meaning it can damage our DNA. So food dyes are found in thousands of products, candies, cereals, Pop-Tarts, Cheetos, fruit cocktail even, cake mixes, and so much more. Now here's a box of Fruity Pebbles, and in addition to the refined rice, sugar, and oil, which are the first 3 ingredients, we see both artificial and natural flavors as well, and red 40, yellow 6, yellow 5, blue 1, and then BHT and BHA. And we'll talk about BHA and BHT in the course too, which are chemicals with carcinogenic concerns, suspected thyroid disorders, and a list of other problems. Carrageenan, which is an additive derived from seaweed, but it's surrounded by controversy because of digestive issues like leaky gut. And we'll talk about aluminum, propylparaben, potassium bromate, all of these additives. We'll talk about those in the course. And there's no way we can possibly cover even a thimbleful of them. So I will provide you with 2 links that will take you to comprehensive lists of additives and preservatives that we might want to avoid. And then there's a section on how to spot hidden animal products in a product on the shelf. And naturally, we want to avoid products that have meat, poultry, fish, dairy, or egg byproducts. And then we'll put everything into practice that you learn in the course. So you're going to get a lot of practice to help bolster your confidence with label reading. And you'll also receive a list of all the tips in PDF form that you can print out and keep for handy reference. And you'll also get a business card size purse or wallet guide that you could take with you to the store for quick reference. So the bottom line is that label reading is crucial if your goal is to make smart choices. And yeah, it takes a little time to get used to this, but it will become second nature to you. After just a few trips to the store, you'll be able to spot things right away. And it's worth all that effort because you're worth it and your health is definitely worth it, both now and in the long term. But even more important is this. So let's focus on whole plant foods and eat as close to nature as possible. Low fat. Look for minimally processed foods that have a short, recognizable ingredient list, and then limit the amount of packaged foods in your diet. And then here is my website. If you have any questions for me, my website is sidnotter.com, or my email address is sidnotter@sidnotter.com. And on my website, you'll find a free webinar called 3 Food Mistakes. I highly recommend you watch that. There's free dessert smoothies there and a free 21-day meal plan. Or if you have any questions about the label course, you'll also find that for sale on the courses tab of my website, but you're getting the course as part of the bundle, which is really a good deal. All right, I'm going to stop sharing now. I've been talking a lot. So I hope you will join us. I know it's a lot of information at once.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I know You've got a cool thing in the bundle too, Jana. What is your contribution to the bundle this year?
Mine is a travel challenge because I hear so much from everybody about problems with staying plant-based on their trips. And my main mode of transportation is bicycling. So I figure if I can tour on a bicycle and stay whole food, plant exclusive, then anybody with a car or that's in some form of transportation where they're not having to pedal a bicycle and carry all their bags on their bicycle. If I could do it, anybody could do it. So I just really want to try to inspire people to try it. It's so much the mental mindset.
Yeah.
If you're going on a vacation and your brain is telling you, oh, you're on a vacation, you should relax, enjoy, let someone else serve you, go out to a restaurant, and you're convinced that that's something wonderful to do, it's going to be really tough to talk yourself out of it. So
Right.
the whole mindset's got to be the realization that restaurants are expensive, they're hugely disappointing, the food is always contaminated with sugar, salt, and fat. And it's not a pleasure. It doesn't taste that good. The more you get onto this lifestyle, the less you enjoy that kind of food and the less you're willing to pay so much money for so little, because you typically have to say, well, I'll take this, but don't put this in it, don't put this in it, don't put
Right.
this in it. You've got to limit so much that it's just not worth the huge amount that you pay. So what I try to do is show more, what to do when you're traveling by using the grocery store. Or if you have to go out, calling and talking with the chef who will be working when you go there. Because
Yeah.
I've run into that several times where you get there and nobody knows what you're talking about because the person that you talk to is long gone, or they couldn't work that night, or there's always something.
Yeah. Yeah, so the bundle has so many other cool things in it too. Not only what you shared alone, I mean, that is worth the price of admission because everybody struggles with that when they're traveling. But there's also pizza classes. Kathy Hester's got pizza classes in the bundle. There's a nice cream recipe book, which if you're looking for some new nice cream recipes, there's jumpstart recipes. There's emotional eating topics in there. There's how to anti-age, how to eat raw foods for anti-aging. There's just so much. Tim Kaufman has products in there. There's a cheese lovers cookbook. There's easy plant-based meals to get started. So many things. Definitely worth looking into for sure. And it's only good from March. You can only get the bundle from March 1st through 10th, 2025. So don't delay.
I mean, I just printed up the list and there's 8 pages of different offerings and it just looks so inviting.
Yeah.
I can't wait to dive in.
Well, thanks for
I am
having me
diving
here
in.
today, Janet. I really appreciate it. And
Well, thanks for coming, Sid. And boy, this course, I can't wait to go through it. It just looks like just so much information. Thank you.
okay, we'll see you in the bundle, everyone.
Bye-bye, Sid.